Hey, Terry.
Hey,
How are
Rachel.
you?
How are you today?
Good, good. I'm digging your hair. You got some cool, you got good facial hair and good head hair as well.
Thank you. This is so long. This is kind of the way I need to comb it. And fortunately, I've got a haircut set up for tomorrow. So we'll see what I do with this.
Cool. You look like a rock star in my book.
Well, thank you. So you having a good week?
Yeah, that's good. So far, so good. Yeah, Nash is here today, so he's actually going to be the one checking for comments on Facebook Live for you. So you're already up on there. Let me make you the
Okay.
host real fast.
And I'm sorry, who did you say was there?
Nash, it's PJ's son.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, awesome.
He'll be monitoring Facebook Live for you while I'm doing other things.
Okay.
Sound good? It'll be kind of fun.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, Nash, glad to hear you have the casts taken off your arm.
Yeah.
So no more breaking arms for a while there.
That's what I hope.
Okay, me too. All right, well, we'll see if anybody joins us momentarily. I know we still got a minute or two.
Yeah. Participants is what I need. So I'm making you the host now. So you'll be able to share your screen a little better.
Okay, thank you.
Why is there a KW Lake Norman picture instead of like?
Do you want to be on camera?
Sure.
Is it okay if Nash is on camera?
Absolutely.
Perfect. He can learn something.
Right.
Perfect.
And at least have something to do for the next 5 hours.
Yeah, instead of just hanging out, walking around.
All right, let's switch seats. How about that? Or move over.
Okay.
Hey,
Perfect.
Nash.
Hello.
Actually, I'm gonna get a different seat. So
I found that one all the way in the computer room.
So if you want to watch this right here, if anyone chats in here, you're going to want to tell Terry any questions that may come up in this little box right here. Are you familiar with Facebook?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Facebook.
Okay. This is Facebook Live, so.
Oh, cool. Don't know what that is, but okay.
So when Terry asks if there's any questions on Facebook Live, just let him know either yes or no and tell him what the question is if there's a question in that, okay?
Okay.
Can you handle that?
And Rachel, check back with me if you don't mind in about 5 minutes. I've got 101 and nobody's on yet. Obviously, we'll give them 5 or 10 minutes at the most, but I'll end it if nobody joins.
It looks like no one's quite on Facebook Live yet. It looks like it was seen by 2 so far, but that doesn't mean anything. Well,
Okay.
maybe a minute or 2.
All right. Well, I'm just going to chill and
You Nash over here. There's Lottie.
I'm
Perfect.
gonna right here see if it works.
all right, good.
Lottie's a new agent with us.
Okay. When did she join?
Hello.
We're gonna mute ourselves right now because we're getting feedback.
Hey, Lottie, are you there? Can you unmute yourself?
Here at the office.
But when she talks, it makes a woo 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 sound right on our screen.
Okay. Well, Lottie, if you can hear me, just make sure you have all your audio devices turned off and try to unmute yourself so we can have a conversation.
Okay.
Perfect. She's about to step out of the office, so she'll jump on in just 1 second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Hey, Lottie.
Terry's our compliance officer.
Okay.
I think it's just push it.
I know, I'm trying to.
All right, we're good.
Okay. See, we're good. Fine. Okay, we shouldn't have issues with the audio anymore now.
Okay, Lottie, how are you doing?
Good, how are you today?
Doing fine. I hear you're brand new with us, so welcome to KW.
I am, I think I am. I think the paperwork is still being processed, but everything should be finished soon. So I'm
Okay.
excited.
All right, well, we're glad to have you.
Thank
Are you
you.
just gonna go sit in your car, or what are your plans?
Yes,
Okay, well, when you can, just tell me a little bit about yourself, about your experience level, what you've been doing or who you've been with.
sure. So I haven't really ever had any experience in real estate. I've wanted to do it for quite a while. I just decided to save up a little bit of money so that I could jumpstart myself in and not have to worry about that side of the process. So I took the classes January and February, and I was actually really excited to take my test at the end of March. And then the coronavirus happened, so my test got postponed to May. So I finally passed that, and it's been a long time coming. So I'm excited to get started and learn everything.
Well, congratulations. We're glad
Thank
to
you.
have you on board. So you haven't done anything in real estate at this time?
No, not yet.
Okay. Have you
I mean,
onboarded to where you have a KW email account and you've got your website started?
So I've started making a website. I purchased a domain a few months ago. And I'm still learning how to create a website and set up all of the technical things with Keller Williams. And I set up an appointment online with Sue on Wednesday so she can help me see if I missed anything.
All right, well, perfect. Well, since you're brand new, what we're gonna do, this class, it's a 1-hour class.
Okay.
And it's about listing forms and other forms you would use to list a house.
Okay.
So we're not going to get really in depth about it. We're just going to go through this kind of quickly because I don't want to overwhelm you. And that's the
Sure.
thing when you're brand new to the business. There's so much to learn. You know, please don't get overwhelmed. You're not expected to know it overnight. You've got a lot of support. Obviously, you've got your broker in charge is Rob Pettit. I'm Terry Rogers. I'm your compliance officer. So I support Rob by looking at all the forms and contracts that get submitted to the office, make sure they're done correctly and that they're signed. And if there's any issues, and then I reach out to the agent through our KW Command site and add notes about what you need to do. And I always tell the agents, please call me if you have any questions. Sometimes, again, if you have a lot of questions, you try to put them in an email. I type with 2 fingers, so I'm not going to be able to answer your questions in an email, but I'll be glad to answer them by phone. So that's the best way to reach out to me. So I'm kind of down the road. You need to get established and get some business. And once you have business, then you turn them in to Command. And as compliance, again, that's when I get involved and look at anything.
Okay.
So that's kind of my role in a nutshell. And we're talking about listings. So there's a saying in this business, it's listings last. In other words, if you've got listings, you're going to be able to last in the business. So that's definitely what you want to go after, is try to reach out to people and get some listings, because of course listings could bring you buyer leads, which you would want to follow up, and listings also get you other listings. So a lot of this you'll learn in Ignite, and you know, with our training program, we've got all the tools for success that will help you. So with that said, and you'll have to excuse me, I've got somebody that's supposed to be here a little before 2, so I'm going to have to kind of glance at my phone, and if they're saying they're on the way, I may have to say, yes, I'm here, otherwise they may not come. So,
that's okay.
So let me, what I'm going to do is share my screen, and I can remember how to do this. Okay, so you can still see me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's see. Here we go. So we're going to just talk about forms for the purpose of this class. And all these are accessible to you through Command and DocuSign. But this is going to be your cheat sheet, if you want to call it that. This is what I would do is if you create a hard paper file for everything that you do, this needs to be page 1. And so this is your checklist. If it's a listing,
Okay.
these are required documents that need to be part of the listing forms that you turn in to Keller Williams. You should turn everything in actually within 3 days. I know this says 48 hours, but I'll give you 3 days of something being signed, whether it's signed by your buyer or signed by your seller, as long as it's a listing or contract. Now, what you do not have to turn in is buyer agencies. Just because you have a buyer agency signed, that's a good thing, but you don't have to submit it to the firm. You're going to create what's called an opportunity. And when you create that opportunity, that is in effect giving us the ability to go look at it if we want to. But you're going to turn things in when you actually have a listing or a pending sale, such as a buyer under contract, or your listing is under contract. So this, again, just gives you a list of forms. Or maybe other things on here that need to be turned in. Basically, if it's part of the contract and it's signed by the buyer and seller, it should be turned in. You want to keep documentation of everything involved with that transaction. And so you're going to turn it in when you have a listing. You're going to turn it in when you have a buyer under contract, under a pending sale, or your listing goes under contract, you would submit it again. And then when the property closes and you're ready to get paid, you're going to turn in your signed closing disclosure or your HUD, in the MLS sheet if it's your listing, showing that you changed that status to sold, because only you can do that and enter the details of the sale. And then if there's a home warranty involved, proof of the home warranty. So you could be submitting things up to 3 times, and you submit in the proper folder. So there's a listing folder for if it's a listing file. If it's a buyer file, there's an under contract folder that you put everything in. And then each of those different files have a closing folder, and you put the closing documents in that folder. So this is just kind of an overview of things that you might need.
Okay.
We good so far?
So far, yes.
Okay. So let's just pull up a listing agreement. Have you looked at a listing agreement yet by chance?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Well, a lot of these are long reads. So what I would encourage you to do is, obviously you probably should be time blocking. So again, don't get overwhelmed, but you need to have activities, handle it just like a business, and have activities that you do every day. And part of it should be actually looking at some forms and familiarizing yourself with how to fill them out.
Okay.
Now, next month, hopefully, if things get back to normal, we'll do an in-person listing class. We do that every month, and it's a 3-hour class, and we're going to cover things in a lot more detail. And that's my goal in June, is for us to be able to do this in person.
Yeah. Now, where is it that you're opening up all these files? Is this in Command?
Yeah, right. All these files are actually in DocuSign,
Okay.
which is accessible through Command.
Okay.
And let's see, this is not the one I wanted to pull up. So let me pull it. Here we go. So once you get signed on to Command, then you get signed on to DocuSign, and that's where we get these forms. This is a listing agreement. Now, it was just revised in May, so it was just revised this month. And as you see, it's 12 pages in length. There's a lot of stuff in here. So again, what you want to do is kind of get a highlighter and a pen. Obviously, when we have our in-person class, we're going to go into a lot more detail, but make sure that you understand everything on here. The reason being is if your seller has a question, you have to be able to answer this, right? So if a seller was to ask me a question about, let's say, how we get paid, well, I'm going to refer, well, let's look at that together, Miss Seller. So under number 7, firm's compensation, Keller Williams and myself, we charge 6% of the sales price. The fee is earned if we bring you a ready, willing, and able buyer. Okay. There's also other provisions in here that even after this expires, if somebody brings you an offer within, a lot of times I'll use 90 days. You can see my cursor right here, correct?
Yes.
So if somebody brings you an offer within 90 days that saw your house as a result of my marketing, in other words, they've seen it before, then you're still going to have to let me be involved in the transaction and pay my fee. You got to pay the commission. You can't sell it without me. In other words, we don't want sellers taking a house off the market just because we find out that somebody told them, yeah, I love this house, I'm going to be sending you an offer. And then they try to cut us out of the commission. That doesn't happen very often, but this is on here. So you do have to be able to understand that. And on the other section of page 4, okay, they may say, well, 6% sounds like a lot. Well, again, you're going to learn a lot of this in your classes through Ignite. Well, Mr. and Miss Seller, 6% goes to Keller Williams, but since we're offering, putting this in our multiple listing service, and we're offering to pay half of that to any buyer agent that may bring you a buyer. So here's where you would check this box here that we cooperate with buyer agents, and we give them half of the commission, 3%. So the 3% goes to the buy side or the other firm. It could be the same firm, but 3% goes to the buy side, 3% goes to the seller side or the listing side. And you split that with your firm, whether you're the buyer agent or the listing agent. So the way I kind of break it down is really Mr. and Miss Seller, that 6% commission, I only get about 1.5% of that. And of course, out of that 1.5%, I have to pay all my expenses, including marketing and taxes. So as you can see, I'm not getting rich listing your home. I do this for a living, but I have to do a lot of them, which I do. And again, there's scripts if they start beating you up about commission. But if you break that down so that they understand that, no, you're not getting 6% all in your pocket. Normally that's going to be split 4 ways. So, and most sellers know what commissions are and what the charges normally are. But now here's the key. Commissions are not standard. They taught you that in real estate school, I'm sure. Commissions are what? Negotiable. Right. So you have to make sure that you let them know that that's not a standard rate across North Carolina. Real estate commissions are negotiable within each company. However, Keller Williams policy and my policy is that we do charge 6%. Now you can charge more. You could charge 7 or 8. It depends upon the situation. If it's vacant land, you might charge 8 to 10%. If it's commercial, you might charge 8 to 10%. But this is not a commercial form. This is a residential form. And you wouldn't be doing any commercial without some commercial experience. So that's about the commissions. And if you look, if you just look on page 1 here briefly, we're going to go through this again quickly. A lot of this is just fill in the blank. So it's nothing to be nervous about when you're in front of a client. What I would normally advise people to do is print this out, or if you're going to use electronic signatures and take your computer with you, fill everything out through DocuSign that you know all of the information on page 1. You're going to be able to pull that up from tax records and MLS data. You're going to know a lot of this except for maybe what the listing price is going to be. So fill out what you do know, and then as you go through and you get the listing, then you go back into the form and you add the additional information. For example, what personal property is the seller leaving with the sale of a house? Well, 99 times out of 100, or maybe even 100 times out of 100, that kitchen refrigerator has got to stay. It's personal property, but kitchen refrigerators, as a rule, stay with the house, even though they're personal property. All the other appliances are considered fixtures. All fixtures, if it's attached to the house, remain with the house unless the buyer excludes them. So in other words, the buyer's not going to, unless the seller excludes them. The seller's not going to take their stove, they're not going to take their microwave or dishwasher, but there are a lot of other things on here, and you really need to be familiar with what's considered a fixture. Basically, the simple way to look at this is if you take that house and you're able to pick it up and turn it upside down and shake it, if it falls off, it's personal property, such as a picture, a piece of art, something like that. If it falls off, it's a personal property. But if it's attached to the walls, if it's affixed to the house, it's going to be a fixture. And then those do remain unless they're excluded in writing, and you disclose that to the buyer and buyer's agent through your MLS listing form. So that's something to certainly read over. And here's the items that do not remain. That's where you would list those right here under section E, items that do not convey. For example, that $10,000 crystal chandelier in the dining room, that may not stay, and that's okay. You know, I would expect a seller to take that with them. So you would put dining room chandelier does not remain. However, what you're going to do is educate your sellers and say, Mr. Miss Seller, you understand that if a buyer sees something in your house, chances are they're going to want it, right? So what you want to do, Mr. Miss Seller, is take that crystal chandelier down before we start showing your house and put something else up in its place. Okay, you need to have a light in the dining room, so you can't just put a cover on it. And do that so that, again, that crystal chandelier doesn't become an item of negotiation. So you just, the more you can help educate your seller, the better. Listing price, again, you're going to determine what that listing price is on your market analysis and give a recommendation to the seller. I'm just scrolling through some of this quickly. Marketing. Now, the listing form was revised in May, and now the National Association of Realtors and our local MLS, they do require, if you put a sign in the yard and you list a property, and you put a sign in the yard, it has to be put in a local multiple listing service within 24 hours. That does not include Saturday, Sunday, or holiday. So if it's a holiday or a weekend, no, you don't have to put it in the MLS until that following Monday or the next business day. But it takes a while to input that data into the MLS. So just know if your sign goes in the yard, to stay within our code of ethics, you do need to put all the information in the MLS within 24 hours. Excuse me, 1 minute.
Sure.
Okay, now I'm back. Now, Lottie, there's one exception. If the seller says, I don't want this listed with a local multiple listing service, I want this to be a firm exclusive listing, then they have the right to do that. It means that only our firm, only Keller Williams Cornelius can bring you a buyer. Okay, so you can still put a sign in the yard, but there's another form that has to be submitted to the MLS basically to withhold that listing. So you have to turn that form in to our local MLS saying, hey, I've got a listing on 123 Main Street, but it's exclusive to the firm. No one else can see it. Because if you don't do that, and it's rare that you would ever run into that situation, but what's going to happen is another agent's going to see your sign and they're going to want to show it because maybe they have a buyer that's interested.
Right.
The MLS doesn't know that it's exclusive to Keller Williams, then somebody's going to complain about it.
Mhm.
So it's rare that as someone really wants to not put it on the local MLS listing service because that's where they're going to get all their exposure. That and through the marketing that you and Keller Williams does. We're not going to get into too much detail on the rest of this other than agency. You remember your agency rules in real estate school? You know what a dual agency is?
Yes.
Okay, so dual agency means you represent both the buyer and the seller, right?
Mhm.
So that's a good thing. Now, some agents are scared of that, but you don't have to be. But if you get in that situation, make sure you get with your broker in charge, Rob Pettit, and that you fully understand your liabilities and responsibilities if you're a dual agent and keeping information confidential.
Okay.
But you're going to get paid on both sides if you're a true dual agent and represent the buyer and the seller. And that does happen. Now, exclusive agency, you know, this is on a listing agreement. Just try to remember, you're never going to be an exclusive agent on a listing agreement. What if, so if the seller asks for that and you accept it, then what you're doing, you're excluding every agent within our Keller Williams Cornelius office. You're telling those agents that do the bulk of the business in this area, hey, I've got this great new listing on the lake, but you can't show it because you can't bring me an offer. Sellers may not understand what exclusive really means. Exclusive means that you're excluding every other KW agent in our office. So you would never, ever do an exclusive listing to where no other Keller Williams Cornelius agent could bring you a listing or to bring you a buyer. So what you're going to have them initial is dual and designated. Dual is and designated is what needs to be initialed on the listing agreement. And designated is a form of dual. So you can't have designated if you do not have dual. So dual agency and designated. Now designated agency merely means, say it's your listing, Lottie. Okay, you have the listing. You work for Keller Williams Cornelius. So do I, and I'm bringing you a buyer. So by default, I'm the designated agent for the buyer, and obviously you're the designated agent for the seller, correct? But we're both dual agents, because dual designated is a form of dual. You got dual and designated, so we're both dual designated agents, one representing the buyer and one representing the seller. So that's what should be initialed on your listing agreement when you have one completed. And I would also recommend you do the same situation with a buyer agency agreement because those are filled out ahead of time and you may not know who's going to be, what home you're going to be writing an offer on. So if you do exclusive on a buyer agency, then that means don't bother to show a Keller Williams Cornelius listing because you're not allowed to pay an offer, right? So does that make sense? Okay, so just remember, dual and designated agencies are your options on the listing agreements and buyer agencies. And then again, the rest of this is really fill in the blank. You're going to want to put all their contact information for the sellers and yourself on page 12, and that's the listing agreement. Any questions on that?
The only question I have, I understand completely dual and designated agency. I just never had heard of the exclusive agency. I was under the impression that you always want to sign the exclusive right to sue, which is different, right?
Right, that's the name of the form. The name of the form is exclusive right to list. In other words, we have the exclusive right to list your house.
Okay.
That's different from agency. This is the listing agreement.
Okay.
Agency is different.
Oh, okay.
Agency has to be selected by your client.
Right.
They have to approve it. So the only three choices are dual, exclusive, and designated. Designated being a form of dual, you always do dual and designated together. What I'm reiterating again is never do exclusive, because you're excluding the Keller Williams Cornelius agents from either bringing you a buyer or showing, if you're the buyer's agent, showing a Keller Williams Cornelius listing, because the client mistakenly did not understand what exclusive is, but that's what they initialed.
Okay.
If
Makes
you ever
sense.
run into that, just merely give Rob Pettit a call and have him walk you through that, so that you can learn scripts and everything to address and explain that a little bit better, because more likely the buyer or seller just didn't know what it meant.
Right.
Hey, Terry,
Yes.
we have a question on Facebook Live when you get a second.
Okay, go ahead with the
It's
question.
from Bobby Joe. Are you ready now?
Yes.
Okay, she's asking, would you have them initial designated if they will allow you to be a true dual agent?
Okay, the reason you have to initial designated and dual is, again, designated is a form of dual. So within Keller Williams Cornelius, if one agent represents the seller and the other agent, such as myself, is bringing you a buyer, I'm a designated agent. And the seller has to authorize that at the time of listing. You can't do that after the fact. If they don't authorize designated agency, then you are the only one as a listing agent that can bring them an offer if you are with, from Keller Williams. Now, you could receive other offers, of course, from other companies, but if they don't approve designated, then again, it cuts out the rest of our Keller Williams office. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And feel free to reach out to me, shoot me a text on Facebook, and I'll be glad to try to respond to your questions later this afternoon if that's still unclear. Okay, here's a big form that is required for everything, and I always like to go over this one because this is not a real estate form, guys. This is a federal disclosure. This is called our RESPA form, or Affiliated Business Arrangement Disclosure Statement, as you see up here. This is a federal disclosure. It does not require the buyer or seller to use any of our service providers that we have listed here on this form. So please understand that when you're asking your buyer or your seller to sign this, that, hey, this is just a disclosure. If you do use the attorney that we're affiliated with, Keller Williams, is going to receive some compensation. Not me personally as the agent, but our firm does. Same thing with the insurance company, the title company, even the home warranty company, if it happens to be America's Preferred. And in that case, you, the agent, would receive some compensation directly. But this is required by the federal government and for all clients, every situation. There have been federal lawsuits for firms that do not disclose business arrangements. So unless this form is filled out, your file will never be complete and we will not be able to pay you until it is signed. So please make sure that it's signed at the time that you have a client under contract for purchase or for a listing. Okay, that's your RESPA form. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, pretty simple. It's just like your working with real estate agents disclosure. Let's pull that up real quick if I can find that. Okay. Now we all know, I mean, that was day one probably in real estate school, that you have to review, it's the first substantial contact. You're working with the real estate agent's disclosure with your buyer or seller. Okay. But it's not enough for Keller Williams just to give them a copy of this. I want to see a signature. You need to get them to sign. Now, sometimes they may refuse to sign initially, and then that's okay. You can document on here, client refused to sign, put the date and the time, and just initial it. Okay. But at least that proves that you actually reviewed it with them on such a said date and time, right?
Right.
But this is the key right here. When you're reviewing the working with real estate's disclosure with your buyers and sellers, it says agent must retain this acknowledgement for their files. This is not a contract. When I'm reviewing that, I always circle, this is not a contract. And I tell them, this just keeps me out of real estate jail. That's all this does. This is, it just tells you about how agency works in North Carolina with sellers, as dual agents, as buyers or buyer agents. It's just information for you, the client. So once you provide that with them, most all of the time, they're more than happy to sign this, and you retain that for your records. And then that's part of what you would turn in to command for your file submission. Please make sure that you do this up front. We have had a situation a while back where someone, I'll be honest with you, I think the agent forgot to get it signed because they listed a house. Okay, so the client signed all the paperwork required to list a house, but the agent tried to tell me that the seller would not sign this form. Now, I don't know about you, but I smell something when they said that. That's not true. They forgot it, or they lost it. If they lost it, just say, I lost it. But here's the thing. Something must have happened with a seller along the way, because they wouldn't sign this again when it was asked. They refused to sign it. So our policy is, it's not enough just to give them this form. We want to get a signature. So if they're going to list a house with you, obviously they're going to sign this. If they're going to have you to work with them as a buyer's agent and have you make an offer, they're going to sign this. So their refusing to sign doesn't hold water with me. That just tells me the agent didn't do their job and present it at first substantial contact. So that's just my 2 cents and my words of advice. I always get that signed at your first meeting if at all possible. And certainly review it with them at your first meeting. But when they're ready to sign a listing agreement or a buyer agency, then that is absolutely the #1 document that you would have signed, correct?
Right.
Okay, and then I'd have the rest signed too. Okay, so any other questions right now? We've got about 10 more minutes and we're going to wrap this thing up so that there's a 2 o'clock class as well. And we want you guys to have a little bit of a break before the 2 o'clock class.
I don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay, well, let's look at this one. Unrepresented seller or your for sale by owner opportunities. So here's a good opportunity for you guys. You see a sign that says for sale by owner, willing to co-broke. That means that they're willing to pay an agent if you bring them a buyer, right? So sometimes it may say that, but if not, you knock on their door and you ask them, hey, I have a buyer that might be interested in seeing your home. Would you co-broke, which means pay you a fee if the buyer buys their house? And most all of the time, they're going to say, of course. So this is all that you need in that situation. They're unrepresented sellers. You're representing the buyer. You're going to have to fill this out. You're going to have to identify the name of your client by name. John Smith or whatever their name is. You have to identify the client or clients, and you have to identify what fee you expect to be paid if that client does in fact purchase their home. So normally it would be 3%, because normally that's what a buyer's agent would receive for their commission, 3%. So you fill out this form, and I would put the fee is due within 2 days of settlement. I mean, that gives the attorney 2 days to basically send you the money. But of course, that money is going to be taken out of the seller's account and proceeds at closing. So this is not as important, but you still have to put something there, right? So I wouldn't put more than one to 2 days. The attorney's the one that's going to take their money out of the proceeds, but you never leave anything blank, right? Always
Right.
make sure you put something in a blank. If it doesn't apply, then you would put NA. So this is all that you need to represent a buyer in a for sale by owner, except, can you read that on the top of page 2?
Do not sign this form until you've received and read the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. So there are actually 2 forms is what I'm getting at. There's 2 things that you need when you represent a buyer and you're working with a for sale by owner. You still need to give them that Working with Real Estate Agents brochure, and they need to sign it first.
The seller
And
needs to sign it?
the seller needs to sign it first, because you have to tell them about agency. That's
Right.
the purpose of the brochure. So
Okay.
you explain the real estate agent brochure to the sellers or the for sale by owners, and they sign that. Then they sign this. You can explain both of these forms together to them. Obviously, you can talk about this form and, hey, Mr. and Ms. Seller, I'm not asking to list your home. You're not having to go through that process. I just have a potential buyer for you. So this is a form to enable me to get paid if my buyer purchases the home. But you still need to have that discussion on the Working with Real Estate's brochure and have them sign that first before they sign this document. So again, 2 forms of documentation for sale by owner, and then the rest of it is strictly your buyer agency forms and your contracts and any other parts of the contracts that need to be uploaded to Command once you are in fact under contract. So there's a lot of times that we represent buyers with for sale by owners. So that's a good thing. And it's also a good thing to try to knock on doors of for sale by owners, even if you don't have a client. Just, hey, in case I do run into somebody looking in this neighborhood, can you please share with me how much you're asking for your home and how big it is? And by the way, when would be a good time for me to take a tour of the home so I could actually see it? In other words, you engage the seller into a conversation, and maybe you might find out that they're interested in talking to a realtor about actually listing their home. And that happens a lot too. That's, again, a way for you to go out and get listings is knock on the door for your sale by owners. A lot of agents will call. Trust me, everybody is calling for sale by owners on the phone, because you can call more that way. But if you see a for sale by owner when you're out driving around sign, I would always try to make time to stop and knock on their door or leave a business card, because I can carry on a much better conversation in person than I can on the phone, because you're just one of a lot of people on the phone, but that may have left messages during the day while they were at work. But if you're on their doorstep engaging in a conversation with them, you're one-on-one. So that's always a good situation to be in, right?
Right.
Okay. Let's see. Let's talk about one other form real quick. and then we'll end this thing. And that would be your property disclosure. So your residential property disclosure. Now here is another form that actually is not a true real estate form. It is created by the North Carolina General Statute 47E. In other words, it's created by the legislature. It's still considered a form that is needed to be filled out, even with for sale by owners, by the seller, and offered to buyers before a buyer makes an offer on the seller's property. So it's your residential property disclosure statement. And you see the state seal up on the top left-hand corner. So that identifies it as a state form as opposed to just a real estate form. This is something that you can give to those for sale by owners. And Mr. and Ms. for sale by owner, did you know that you still need to provide this to any potential buyers? I wanted to give you a copy of this as a courtesy and introduce myself. And then you just keep going with a conversation as much as they allow, and see if you can set up a time to actually have a formal listing appointment with them, or at least, again, share contact information so that you could stay in touch. Maybe they would be interested in having you come back at a later date and talk to you about marketing of their home through you and Keller Williams. So this is a very lengthy form, and in short, it does have to be filled out by the seller. This is not something that you fill out for them. You can help explain some of the questions, but they physically need to put their address in ink on page 1. They need to sign on page 1, and they need to answer all of these questions on pages 2, 3, and 4 themselves. They need to check yes or no representation. So obviously it takes a little bit of time, and you want to go slow to make sure they stay on, stay in sync. What you don't want to do is have them check yes and then say, oh, I'm sorry, I meant no, and scratch it out. You can't scratch out. You just need to make it nice and neat and very clear about what the answer is. So take your time on that. And it's easy if there's most everything, it should be a no answer, but sometimes it's a yes answer. A yes answer, in short, usually means there's something that's broken or not functioning as intended. For example, let's say number 20, and this is easy. Is there any problem, malfunction, or defect with any of the appliances, et cetera, et cetera? Yes, my dishwasher is not working. Okay, so they're going to check yes, and then they're going to go to page 3, and it says right in the middle of the page, if you answer yes, please explain. And it's that simple. What you're going to do is on page 3, you're going to put number 20. So in response to question number 20, dishwasher not working at this time. Very simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
So usually you shouldn't have very many yes answers that would require explanation here. But if you do, it's usually very short and sweet as far as answering those questions. Another one might be number 26. Is there any noise, odor, smoke, etc. from commercial or industrial or military sources that affect the property? Well, if this house you're listing is within a mile or 2 of the airport, there's going to be noise. Okay, so for this to be done properly, the seller should put yes, and merely you would just put number 26, property located within 2 miles of airport, some noise. That way they're filling it out correctly and they're being honest, and it just makes the whole transaction go a lot smoother if they take their time to accurately fill out this form and answer the questions in a true manner. Okay, so that's your property disclosure. There's also a mineral oil and gas rights disclosure that is the same state of North Carolina form that needs to be filled out. And that one is very simple. It's just a one-page form. There's only 6 questions, and they would all be, no representation is going to be normally the answer for number 1 and number 4. And then the 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 are going to be no. Basically, for residential property, there's mineral oil or gas rights have not been severed by the seller or a previous owner in most all cases. So that's why I say most of the time those answers are no. Now, no representation means they don't know maybe what happened about severing mineral oil or gas rights from the previous owner, or for example, 100 years ago. Okay, that land always existed. The house may not have been there, but the land always existed. So we're talking about the land in this case. So they may not know unless they read their deed whether or not a previous owner severed the mineral oil or gas rights. Typically, you're never going to run into that in residential property unless you've got a few thousand acres you're listing up in the mountains. And in that case, in some situations, the seller would retain the mineral rights for mining, for example.
Right.
Okay, well, that's all the time that we have for today. I can certainly answer a couple of questions if you guys have any.
I just want to go over again how I access these on command, because I do want to try to go over some of these today. So
well, through command, there's going to be a link to DocuSign. So you're going to have to create a DocuSign account, and actually that's where all the forms are going to be kept in DocuSign. So you don't necessarily have to click on command. If you created a shortcut for DocuSign, you can go straight into DocuSign and look at some of those forms. And there's a lot of them, but again, there's going to be continuous training as we move forward in your career. Every month, there's always going to be something. So we're going to definitely be here for you guys.
Okay. Well, that was very helpful. Thank you so much. I don't have any further questions.
All right. Well, Lottie, thank you very much. Thank you on Facebook. Please feel free to reach out to me if you do have any additional compliance type questions. If they're broker in charge questions, please respect your broker in charge, Rob Pettit, and reach out directly to him for those type of questions. And we look forward to reviewing some files from you guys soon in command, which means you have some business. So thank you so much for your time today. Be safe out there, and we will see you soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, y'all too. Bye-bye. All right, we're done. Thank you, Nash, for your help. Have a good one.